Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
YouTube, what is good? Welcome to Philly Take with RB, home of the hottest sports takes presented to you by yours truly. Like always, go follow me on my social medias, and if you're new to the channel or if you've been subscribed already, smash that like button and help spread this content to other great Philadelphia fans. So today, something huge happened, and I'm just sitting here, it's, early in the afternoon, and JJ Redick, who has his own podcast, former Sixer JJ Redick, drops an episode, and he had Jimmy Butler on, and they talked about a lot of good stuff that, has answered a lot of the questions I've had about this team for the last season. They went into depth. They didn't explicitly come out and state everything that we've wanted to know, but, Jimmy talked about the reason why he left Philadelphia. JJ Redick talked about when he knew it was time to depart. They talked about some of the flaws in Brett's system and, some of the complications this team went through last season. And more and most importantly to me, they talked about, what kind of happened throughout that Raptors series and after it was done and going into the free agency, what was the end result? What made Jimmy Butler make the decision that he did to go to Miami? There's a lot to talk about within this. First, I'm going to start off by playing two video clips. We're going to talk about both of them, but listen closely to what Jimmy Butler says. One, about what he really thought about in that Miami series and who the ball was given to more and all of that.
Towards the end of the year, though, as we did tweak how the offense was run, especially in the playoffs, where you were playing on the ball more. Did that relationship evolve at all, or was it strictly a professional relationship?
I would say it was professional, but to this day, I don't think that was fair to switch over like that. Even though I think we played great basketball like that, I don't think it was fair because the entire year, Ben had the ball. Ben had the ball. Yeah. So you mean to tell me that in one playoff series, you just switch it up like that? I would be like he was. I would feel a type of way. I would think that it's up to play one way the entire year and then be like, you know what? Boom, this is how we're going to do it. And I used to tell bro, I was like, bro, I think we should mix in me handling the ball a little bit. No, we do A to B. We do this. Cool.
And then the second one is going to pertain to when Jimmy Butler knew. What made him decide to leave Philadelphia?
Somebody asked, can you control him? Like, can you control Jimmy? If you can control Jimmy, we would think about having him back. I was like, you don't got to worry about it. Can't nobody control me. For one, I ain't just out there doing no bull. But the fact that you trying to control a grown man, nah, I'm cool. Because I don't do nothing that's just drastically fucking stupidly crazy. I do not do that. So don't sit here and come at me with we got to try to control him. Nah, you good. Don't even worry about it.
So from that first video clip, you can hear Jimmy Butler. He did not have a lot of interest in Brett Brown. He didn't really respect his system, Like, he went through the motions. And let's keep in mind, this is all from Jimmy Butler's point of view. It can't be proven that it is true, but if you hear how JJ Redick talks with him, a lot of the stuff, and go listen to this podcast, by the way. It's on Apple Podcasts, and I listened to the whole thing, even though they only talked about Sixers for about 20, 25 minutes. It was some very interesting stuff. And Jimmy Butler, he really did not believe in the system that Brett was running. He says that their relationship was strictly professional. They didn't really go in depth more than basketball. He didn't really feel like he had someone there for him to develop him as a basketball player. Like Brett, in Miami, he talks throughout the podcast about how Eric Spoelstra has really helped and how he holds these guys accountable and how every single day he's helping these guys elevate. Jimmy Butler didn't feel that with Brett Brown. And obviously it's hard coming from a guy like Jimmy because he's been an issue in other locker rooms before. I don't think he's handled every single thing perfect. In Minnesota, the way he departed there, going out, calling people out at practice. I like Jimmy Butler in the sense that he always worked hard. He was the dude. When you needed a shot, a bucket, you gave him the ball. And he would make it happen. He would hold guys accountable. Now, maybe sometimes he does go a little too far. Overall, it is clear that Jimmy Butler did not believe in what Brett was doing. And in that Raptors series, he says, and JJ agreed with him, that, through the whole season, Ben Simmons was the ball handler here. We saw it. We questioned it. Why didn't Jimmy Butler get more touches in the first half of games last year? In the fourth quarter, we would give him the ball, and he would deliver. When we needed to, he would come up big. Why weren't we spreading the wealth? And in that Raptors series, apparently, Brett decided to tweak the system and go completely to Jimmy Butler. And Ben Simmons was, at that point, he was second nature to everything. And he felt some type of way about it, as Jimmy alluded to. Now, I don't think, obviously, Ben Simmons not shooting, and to me, that is partly Ben Simmons' issue and partly Brett Brown's issue as well. I think he needs to be held accountable for that, but he also needs to work on it himself just from intrinsic motivation to be better and to help this team go farther. But when Ben Simmons can't shoot and the Raptors are throwing different things at you, Ben Simmons cannot just sit on the court in one position and do nothing else except play defense. He has to be a part of your offense. Jimmy said that he's suggested to Brett at different times, like, maybe mix in me and Ben throughout a game. Just keep throwing different looks. Keep switching it up. Keep it new. Keep it fresh. But Brett had his way of doing things, and that's kind of where the two collided, And he says, they play good basketball like that. We did. We went to 7 games. But in the end, Ben was not utilized like he needed to be. And some of those games, Philly fans, and even me, we were hard on Ben Simmons. Because some games he came out and shot the ball 5 or 6 times. Really wasn't involved at all. But now I'm here, and it's kind of making sense. Maybe it wasn't all his fault, And the other clip that Jimmy talks about leaving Philadelphia says that he had heard that someone wanted to pretty much control him. They said, we would bring you back, but we needed someone to control you. And Jimmy is not that type of beast. He's going to speak out loud, give his thoughts, be himself. Maybe it's not the right thing for here, and especially with these young guys, maybe it's just not the right fit. In Miami, he's doing what he wants to. He's taking control. He has the will of those guys. Who knows? Maybe if Brett doesn't come back, Jimmy does come back. Who knows? But for them to go out and I agree with Jimmy, to say that they want to control him, obviously you can't have the guy just going left and right, saying things and, putting others down. But in Philly, to me, he didn't really do that. He handled things like a professional, a lot more than Chicago and Minnesota. And for them to say that, if it is true, I just don't think that's smart at all. I see why he left. The Miami situation was presented to him, and it was so appealing. And when you kind of feel kind of departed by Philly, he said after that playoff game when things cooled down, him and JJ Redick both felt like, man, there's a good chance we're not coming back here. The belief in the system was not there. Them two, meaning Brett Brown and Jimmy, never really got along, and Jimmy would call Brett out on what he was doing wrong. Jimmy was holding people accountable, and obviously you can see that this year we are lacking that. A couple other things that were said during this podcast, and I wrote them down because I wanted to make sure that we discussed them. JJ, pretty much the first question he asked Jimmy was, on this going through the season last season, if it was your first time. Not your first time, but your first time getting traded to a real contender. And you had to fit in right away with Joe and Ben. And they talked about and said that Jimmy did a good job of doing that. He came here. He wasn't the completely outspoken guy. He was trying to fit in, trying to be better. And Jimmy said, on any given day, as a player, I did not know who the F was in charge. I never knew what to expect. Guys do not believe in Brett's system. And this is not here to be a video just to hate on Brett. I'm just speaking the truth. Guys really do not believe in this system. When you wake up one day and you're asked to provide and you're given the ball, and the next day you're watching film and you don't know what to expect because things are changing and there's not really that identity, and you have too many stars and you don't allocate the touches right. You don't give each of them what they need and what they deserve. And Jimmy and JJ describe how they went into a film session. It was JJ, Jimmy, Ben, and Joe. And Brett was trying to, get those guys to mold together. But during the film session, he said it was so quiet you could hear the clicking of the mouse. No one said a word. No one said a word. How does that make sense? If you're going to go into a film session, you have to explain things. You have to talk to these guys. You have all these different personalities. You have guys trying to mold together. We're trying to build something here. Communication is key. Whether it was in another city, whether it was in Portland, they were having these film sessions, but Brett Brown was really not laying down the law. He was not putting down his foot. It was kind of like we would just let it ride out and see how things go. And I see that this year too. They really don't have a formula. And this started to anger the guys, especially Jimmy, because he wanted to fit in. He wanted his role. Obviously, Jimmy is that type of dude. I don't think he's capable of being on a team without being the number one option. He wants to be the star. He wants to take control. Maybe that's not what will happen for him here. And that's fine. I understand that. But for Brett Brown to switch things up and not even give him a chance to be himself, and you're giving him touches in the fourth quarter, and then in a playoff series you just call upon him and ask him to do something completely different, and he performs. But even he admittedly himself says that it wasn't fair to Ben Simmons. And that even brings upon a bigger issue. Does Ben Simmons believe in Brett Brown? He's still with this team. He said Ben Simmons felt some type of way during and after that playoff series. So what does Ben Simmons think? Is he going to perform this whole season, and when we get to the playoffs, is Brett Brown going to take away his touches and leave him out in the cold? Who knows? The last thing I want to talk about is how JJ talked to Elton Brand in his exit meeting. JJ Redick said after that exit meeting, keep in mind this is right after the season ends, usually a week or two. He said that as soon as he got done that exit meeting, he knew that he was not coming back to Philadelphia unless there were no other options. And I think that is completely ridiculous. That is a mistake on Elton Brand. Obviously, we raked JJ Redick through the coals. He could not play a lick of defense. He was a liability in the playoffs. But, not even a guy off the bench that can shoot. Remember, we need the Sixers to get some shooters. Now, we've acquired some during the season, but honestly, we missed JJ Redick shooting. He could roll off a screen, and that's when Brett Brown wasn't scared to actually call, screens, like off-ball screens, and guys in the corner, shifting up, and there was more movement on offense. Now we're just stale, and usually it's iso ball most of the time, and it's just not the same. And when you need a knockdown shot, JJ Redick, to me, was always that dude. He was there, ready to knock down a three, and we don't have that anymore. And you kind of need that in the playoffs, and that's one of the reasons why I do not think the Sixers will fare well in the playoffs. But anyway, he knew that he was going after that, and I just think that's pretty crazy, man. You're just going to let JJ Redick walk out? I mean, for the last couple years, he hasn't been the best player on the team. That's not what he's asked to do, but JJ Redick has been a true professional. I think he has that hard kind of personality about him as well. Not to the extent that Jimmy does, but he has that about him, guys respect JJ Redick. And not only does he do that, but he knocks down shots, and he's there to provide you with something when you need it. So I just think that that JJ should not have been let go just that early, just off into the wind. And then Jimmy Butler, he heard, obviously, in free agency, like I said, what we just talked about a few minutes ago. And at that point, it was over. Jimmy did not want to come back to this organization. He did not like how things were run pretty much the entire time since he came here. And just with the decisions that Brett makes on a daily basis, he never knew what to expect. And that kind of solidifies what we've talked about here. I mean, for me personally, the three reasons why Jimmy could have possibly left, and I've been thinking about this for quite some time. One, he had a bad relationship with Ben and Joe, and they collided, and they all wanted to be the star, and none of them could really mesh. The second thing was that Elton may have lowballed him in free agency. That was a potential thought of mine. Maybe Elton didn't offer him the max, and the idea and the lifestyle of Miami was presented to him, and he said, you know what, I'm going to go be their guy. And then the third thing, which has now pretty much been confirmed and is now true, I'm glad I can live with it. Jimmy just didn't believe in the system, in the organization, and in Brett Brown, and we did not do enough to get these guys all meshed together. There's still things we don't know. We don't know if all of this is completely true, but just hearing, how JJ Redick talks to him, and overall, it's just Jimmy and Brett never got along. And to be honest, I miss JJ and Jimmy, and I wish things could have worked out a little bit different, but great insight and great information in that podcast. Definitely go check it out. Let me know down below your thoughts on everything on this whole situation and, the Sixers season and everything going forward. And just let me know what you think. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for stopping by. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll catch you on the next one, man. Peace.
Perfect.